Hello, hello everybody. I'm here. I'm a little bit late. I added a camera, and I'm not sure that I have the right microphone hooked up. So hopefully, I'll pop in and check a couple times to see if the sound is okay. Otherwise, it's this microphone, or that microphone, and I'm not sure. I don't think it's the one on my computer. Hello. It is 2021. I hope that your holidays were restful. They couldn't be too busy. At least here in Michigan, there weren't venues open, so you had to stay home. So we stayed home and we went to bed early. I finished up my Diana quilt, and I was in bed and asleep before midnight. I hope you were too. So I am going to talk to you about medallion quilts. And we're going to do a build your own medallion quilt through the next couple months. You can follow along. I'm going to give a block for the center this month, and you could choose to do something different if you want to. You don't have to do the exact same block that I'm doing. Sorry about my lighting. I missed one of my lights today. So I'm going to put one of my blocks, or I'm going to show you a block. You can do the same block, or you can substitute your own if you don't like mine. About an hour after I get off, then I will have two different handouts in the files. One will talk about possible amounts of fabric that you might need if you want to do the medallion as I do it. You might want to round up a little bit if you want to do more things than what I do, just to I don't know, to make it your own. And that's the whole goal, is to make this your own quilt. You can make it just like mine, but your fabrics will be different than mine. I am going to make it scrappy. There are places where I'm going to need bigger chunks of fabric, but my stash does have enough fabric that I can probably get some of those bigger chunks out of there. And I'll talk about those strategies as I go along. Okay, as I talk about that, I'm going to show you a medallion quilt. This is a small medallion quilt. This center is one block. This is one row, or one border, I should say. This is another border, and then there's a plain border on the outside. So this is a medallion. It just has doesn't have as many borders as many medallion quilts do. It just has the 3 borders. So it's an example of a medallion quilt. We aren't going to be quite this involved unless you decide that you want to do that. So I'm going to double check Facebook. Oh, I forgot. This is one of those things that I've put my phone down somewhere in the house and I can't find it. Isn't that terrible? I highly recommend that you don't do that. So there we go. Seeing if there's comments. Okay. I'm not seeing any, but that doesn't mean you aren't commenting. I will catch up on them later if I can. Like I said, I wish I knew where I set my phone down. I finished work at 2 o'clock, and then I had to run here to kind of get going. So I was kind of busy. So there we go. Okay, go back to where I can switch cameras and such. So I now have 3 cameras. I have the one attached to my computer where I'm changing cameras and doing all of those things. And then I have a camera at my sewing machine. And I have a camera at my cutting station. And I can move you can see I can move my ironing station things to my cutting station. I'm kind of excited about this. I have 3 cameras. I can't go with 4 because I don't have any more slots in my computer. Okay, so what I am going to do for the center of my medallion is I am going to make 4 of these blocks, because I want to have an 18-inch block in the center of my quilt. So I'm going to do 4 of these and do a design with the 4 of these. And what I need for that is, now remember, I don't like ugly numbers, so I have rounded up my numbers. For my red, ooh, I should have done a little more ironing on these. For my red, I need 1 4-inch. If you are someone who does exacts, you'd need 3 7/8, but I would rather square up and make sure it's right. I need 1 3.5-inch. Of my green, I only need 1 4-inch. My yellow, I need a 2-inch square. And of my white, I also need a 2-inch square. And then I need a 2 by 3.5-inch rectangle. I need 3, oops, it's hard to tell. These are all white on white, and it's hard to tell if they're up or down. 3 3.5, and I need 2 4-inch squares, okay? So I'm going to reorganize these. I'm going to start off with my 4-inch squares. So I'll set these aside. And I'm going to move my iron over here. I'm going to press these because they've been in my stash for a while, and the wrinkles, I think, are permanent until I get them stuck in my quilt. Once they get in the quilt, they've been ironed and sewn so many times that they finally obey. Okay, so I'm going to set aside my darks, well, or my dark and my medium. When you see this, I'm going to step back a moment and talk about my color choices. I am going to do a controlled scrappy quilt, so I'm going to use reds, and all the reds are going to be what I call dark. I'm going to use gold and yellow. Those will be one of my mediums, and I'm going to use greens, and that will be my other medium. And I'm going to use all white on white fabrics for my background fabric. I can probably do this out of my stash. I might have to get a little bit more white on white because I do use a lot of white on white. So now I'm going to go back to where I was. So I'm going to set aside my dark and my medium. I'm going to move that out of the way too. I'm going to find the back of my fabric. Again, white on white isn't always easy to tell, but I think I've got it. And I am going to draw a diagonal line down the middle. I know that a lot of people like to draw their stitching line. I'd rather just draw one line because I have a good 1/4-inch foot on my machine. And you should be able to see this. I have really bright light on my machine, and when I was playing with this block a little earlier, you couldn't see the pencil line. So hopefully it's a disappearing marker. This one is the Select, Quilter Select Self-Erase marker. I have used up all the self-erase solution in the other side, but I have plenty of the other side. This will disappear in a couple days with humidity, or I could use a lot of water to get rid of them. Okay, I'm going to take one of these and match it right sides together. I almost did that wrong earlier today. Right sides together with my dark, which in this case is red, and with my medium, which is green here. And no, I don't always pin, but I'm doing it for you guys. Hope you appreciate that. When I do go to sew, I'm going to do a very scant 1/4 inch. I'm not going to do a generous at all. I know I have extra fabric out here because I added that 1/8 of an inch, but I still want as much extra fabric. And it's in the seam allowance, so it's gonna work well. So I'll take these to my machine and see. Yay, that worked. Okay, yes, you can pretty much see the line. Okay, so I have 2 of them, and I'm gonna sew them assembly line. And what I'm doing is I am running the edge of my 1/4 inch, and this is very scant on the edge of my foot. I am running that on the line, so I almost can't see the line as I sew. So I'm going to sew down this side. I'm going to get to the pin, take the pin out, and sew. Probably should have done this so the pins were left-handed, so my hand isn't in your way. So I'm going to sew to the end here, and what I'm going to do, this time I'm going to put the pins in the other way. I'm just going to slide this one up, and I'm going to continue stitching. So I don't have to cut it and take it out. And when I get to the pin, take it out and stitch. Now, I'm going to raise my presser foot. I'm going to turn this around without cutting my thread. I'm going to put my presser foot back down, and now I'm going to stitch down the other side. I haven't had to cut my thread, which is a good thing because for some reason my thread cutter on my machine is cutting it so short that it keeps on unthreading the needle, and I don't like that. It takes time to thread the needle, and my hand would be in your way. So there you go. Now I'll cut my thread, and while I'm thinking of it, I'm going to grab that thread and pull it. So if you have an automatic thread cutter and it cuts it too short, just try to always remember to tug a little bit of extra thread out from underneath. Okay, so we'll go back to our cutting station, and I usually do scissors to cut those, or another option, I don't know if you've got the gypsy something or another, but there's a couple different ones. This is the one I have. It has a little blade in this notch, and so when you've been assembly line sewing, you can just do this, run this down so the threads are cut right in that blade. I didn't think of it until just now. Okay, so I have these sewn, and you can cut these with scissors, or you can cut them with your rotary cutter. This is not, this isn't a place where you have to be so precise that I don't know, it doesn't matter if that spot is precise. You just want to cut basically in the middle of the two. So now I will move my ironing station in here, and I will press all of these open. Okay, what I do, I lay my dark side up when I want the dark to be when I want my seam to be pressed to the dark. So I put my dark side up, I'm going to press it as I sewed it. I'm going to stick my finger in here and start opening it up. I'm going to open it gently, and I put my, I'm hovering, and then I set my iron down. And now I'm going to hover, and I'm going to set my my iron down. Okay, so there we go. Looks like it very edge. Didn't want to cooperate. I'm thinking I don't have my iron turned up quite enough. There we go. Okay, and instead of taking this and moving it off to the side, I'm just going to take my next one. I'm going to put my cut line up against the seam there, and I'm going to press it as I sewed it. And then I'm going to open it, hover, press, hover, press. And then I'm going to take my next one. What happens is I'm still kind of pressing that back one, and that helps to keep that seam going where it needs to go. Okay, hover, press, hover, press. And I have one more that I need to do. Yeah, that leading corner just is not cooperating. But my iron is a little hotter, so it's that's cooperating. And again, hover and then press. And those four are now pressed. I'll leave those there and move my iron out of the way. Okay, now I want to trim these to 3.5 inches. They're oversized. Again, I would rather trim them up and know that they're square, because as I go along, I start speeding up, or my brain gets distracted, and my seams aren't always exact, or my cutting isn't always exact. This way, I know that this will be a 3.5 inch square when I get to it. So, I've got my 6.5 inch square. This is one of the older Creative Grids non-slip rulers. I've lined my diagonal up on my diagonal. I've got my marks for my 3.5 inch line. I like to have a little bit past it on this first trim. And I've got a little bit of fabric out here and out here. At least I think so. I'll move it just a smidge because I can't tell on the red side because of my angle. Okay, so now I'm going to hold it in place. I'm going to trim and trim. Oh, come on. And usually it comes away. Okay, and of course I have a rotating mat, but it's being held down by the stand that the camera's on, so I can't rotate it while you're looking. Okay, so this time I've turned my square around. I still line it up on the diagonal line, but this time I know that this is a 90-degree angle because I just cut it. So I can line that up on my line, and I'm good. Now I have a perfect 3.5 inch square. And I do that with all 4 of them. I have to say, sitting down is not the best way to cut. Your angles aren't as good as when you're standing up. Ergonomically, it's not as good. If you have any physical issues, you have to adapt and work with that. As you can see, once you get going, I've done quilts where I've had to do a couple hundred half-square triangles trimmed up, and I still will do it this way. Some people say never again. I still will do it this way because they come out the right size this way. I've tried, like I've said, I've tried the other methods, and I can hold it for a while, but then I start getting all distracted, and my squares don't come out square. My seams, my cutting, I don't know what it is, but this way they come out square. Again, use a rotating mat. And I have like a TV tray, and I can just set that up in the living room, and we can watch a movie, and I can just trim. Again, if you're marking your ruler, then you don't have to think hard because you know where your lines are, and you can just cut them. So I'm going to double check Facebook, see if there's any. I'm not seeing any, but that doesn't mean you aren't there. I'm commenting. There we go. Hello, Ellen. I know you commented a while back. So, okay. Go back. Okay, so now I have those 4 done. Now I need to do the very tip of my flower. And this is going to take my 2, let's see, there we go, 2-inch squares and my 2 by 3.5-inch square, or rectangle. I do know my geometry. So I'm going to sew these 2 together. So I'll take them to the sewing machine. Pretty simple. Line them up. And stitch. Oop. Obviously my dog heard a noise outside. Okay, so now I'm going to press this toward my medium, which is my yellow. I'm going to just take it quick out of view rather than move everything. Oh, come on. There we go. And now I'm going to sew these 2 pieces together. When I go to sew these together, what I'm going to do is I will have my 2 by 3.5-inch rectangle on top, but I'm going to look at the bottom and see where my seam is. I want that seam to be pointing away from the needle, or from where it's being stitched, so that it doesn't get flipped the wrong way. If it's an issue, you can also pin it down. So, yeah, my dog is my companion when I sew. She sits in my glider chair, and obviously she also makes sure that the neighborhood is safe. Okay, again, when I get to the pin, again, my hand's in the way. When I get to the pin, I take it out. Okay. And this time, I'm going to press this toward the big piece so I don't have to press this seam back on itself. So I leave the side up that I want this. Oop, I didn't switch my camera. Sorry about that. I want the bigger piece to be the one where the seam. The dog is distracting me. I want this side to be where the seam is pressed to this. So it's going to be up, and then I'll open it and kind of finger press it there. Glide, press, glide, press. Okay, and there we go. All the units are ready to sew together for my block. So I'm going to put them out. as they need to be. Let's see. And I need to move that up just a little bit. And over. Not used to the 3-camera setup yet. So everything's in slightly different places. Okay. And there we go. That's going to be my block. Oop, nope, I've got that wrong. There we go. There. So that'll be my block. And what I'll do is I will take, and I'll sew these together here. I'll sew this on here, and I'll sew this on here. And again, I'm not going to cut my thread in between these units. After I've sewn all 3 of these together, I am going to open these up. I'm not going to worry about pressing them at this stage. And then I'm just going to add these on. Again, not cutting in between, so that when I open it up, all of my units are exactly where they need to be, and they're strung together. I am going to have one in that state, if I can reach it. So I have this one already sewn, like I just described. So I have this seam sewn in the string, this seam or in the thread, and then this seam, thread, this seam, and thread. Okay, this is where I now take it to the iron and iron it. But at this stage I double check, do I have any of my pieces in the wrong direction? Because it's much easier to take 1 seam or 2 seams out than to take 3 or even 4. Thankfully, this is a full piece of fabric, so you shouldn't have any trouble unless you're fussy cutting and want something a specific direction. So now I'm going to press these seams. So I'll just press it as I sewed it, like that. And now I'm going to press them every other way. So this one, it really, you've got a seam here and a seam here, so it really doesn't matter. But if I look here, I'm going to want this one to go that way, and I prefer this one to go to my middle piece. So this one is going to go toward my yellow, my medium, rather than my dark. Okay. This one here, I want to go the other direction. It's a little harder to do, but I can do it by tucking it under with my finger when I pull it. Now I'm going to just hold it with my finger, double check. You can feel if that seam is there. So I'm going to press that. And then this one here, I'm going to press that way. Again, glide over it, hover over it, and then press down. So I have this one going that way, this one going this way, and this one going that way. I'm going to do the other 3 seams. And again, I'm going to press this one out toward the background fabric. This one is going to go toward the dark fabric, the middle fabric. So again, I'm press it as I sewed it. Now I'm just going to take my finger and tuck that underneath and press. And then this one press it as I sewed it, open it up, hover, and press. So that now the seams are all, I'm moving my camera, sorry about that. Okay, so now my seams are all pressed opposite one another. So this one goes this way, and then like that. Boy, white on whites are a bear to work with. I will finish this quilt with white on whites, and I will have some patches that are backwards. It just is what happens. This one goes out, this one goes in, and this one goes out. So now when I take to go to sew these, I have extra thread here, and it's going to bug me. So I'm going to snip that off. I have a tangle of thread here, but I am not going to untangle that at the moment. I'll just get the extra off there. Okay, so when I go to sew these, you can see that these seams are going in opposite directions here. This one is here, and this one is here. And I have opposite directions happening over here. This is where they'll nest, so I can bump those seams up against each other. And I'm going to take one of my fork pins to hold that in place. And find another fork pin. I do like these fork pins for that reason, because they hold both sides at the same time. And the fork pins are very fine, so I do sew over them, especially when I have intersections. Sometimes there's intersections that have a lot of stuff going on. I sew over my pins. I slow way down so that the needle will deflect around my pin rather than force it into my sewing machine. Okay, so now I'm going to bring this over to the machine. Okay, I did pull my thread. That is not the place I wanted that needle to go down. Sorry. Okay, now we're good. And I was going to show you leaders and enders today, and I did not get that ready, so we'll talk about that another time. Now, I'm going to let my needle come up, or my foot come up, tuck that little bit of fabric under there. Now I'm going to go super, super slow. So again, my needle can deflect if it is going to hit the pin. Now, once I've gotten to my seam, then I can take the pin out, and I've just passed the seam. So I've taken my pin out so that I don't hit the other side. I can go a little faster across here. Now I'm coming up to here, tuck that down. I don't know where my purple thing is. Okay, and go super slow again, because if I hit the pin, I want to deflect. Okay, now I'm over the seam intersection, so I can take my pin out, so I don't have to worry about the other side. And I'm going to sew this the way. There we go. I'm going to grab my purple thing. I can see it on the other side of my machine, because that does help you to poke in and get those. Now, if I open it up, I should have a good intersection there and a good intersection there. I'm pleased with those. So now I'm going to go to the other side here. Oh, almost came unthreaded because I caught the thread. Okay, so I'm going to take and use my fork pins again at my intersections. Again, this one is super tight in on my machine. I'll be working on better placement maybe for this one because I'm almost running into it all the time. Okay, so I'll put my fork pins in on either side. And where's the other one? There it is. And again, they should nest. You can feel it when they come together. There we go. And here we go. Get that under there. And start stitching. That thread out of the way. Okay, this is where that purple thing is really handy. I can hold this down so that when my foot comes up to it, it doesn't push that fabric up. And slow so I can go over the pin without pushing it into the machine. One more stitch and then I am past the seam intersection. So I can pull out my pin. And I'm seeing I did not get that in the right spot. Probably would not have been noticed, but it was going to bug me when I was doing this. So there we go. And again, slow when you get to that pin. So you can deflect one more and then I'm past my intersection and I can take out my pin. Another thing the purple thing is good for. There we go. And I have now finished 1/4 of my block. Because I'm going to have 4 of these. Good, I'm done sewing for this moment. I just unthreaded my machine. So I'm going to take this over to the other station. There we go. So I've got it all sewn together, but I just want to check how nice this is. This is maybe a thread off. I could take it out and I could play with it. I am not going to do it because if I'm walking past this laying on the couch or hanging up on the wall and it's finished as a quilt, I'm not going to see this one thread off. If I were putting this in a quilt show, I would take care of that. This intersection looks good. This intersection looks good. So this is something you have to do. When you use this webbing technique that holds your whole block together, I now have to cut that thread that was holding my block together. I have to cut those threads. Well, no, I don't have to. I could just press all my seams to one side. But if I want to flatten my seams out a little bit more, I need to do that. Okay, so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take and I'm going to pop my seam. This one here, I can see that the seam is on this side and this seam is on this side, which means I need to pull away from those seams. So on this side, I have to pull away from here. So I'm going to push. On this side, I'm going to pull toward me. Okay? So I do that. Every once in a while, there we go. Where'd that go? Every once in a while, you might have to pick out a stitch or two because it won't pop. But I was able to pop that one. See if this one will pop. That one popped. This one popped. And again, this one here, I push on that side and pull on this side. This one I pull on this side and push on that side. You just have to look at where your seams are. Okay? And I'm going to kind of finger press these where they need to go before I bring it to the iron, before I bring the iron to it, I should say. So I will press. This is another good place for using that purple thing. If you need to hold something in place as you get the iron close to it, and I'll show you that in a moment here. I'm just going to finger press these seams. Say this isn't wanting to behave. I can hold that down with that purple thing, and guess what? If I hit it with my iron, it doesn't hurt me. And I'm a fan of not being burned. I have burned myself enough with an iron. In fact, when I made my wedding dress and pressed it a couple days, when I pressed it a couple days before my wedding, I burned my arm, and I had that burn mark on my arm when I got married. So lovely. I don't think anybody cared or anybody noticed, really. I did. But there we go. I like to press from the front to make sure that everything looks good. And there we go. That's 1/4 of my center medallion. I hope that was helpful to you. Like I said, in about an hour, I will have 2 different files up. One will talk about what you might need fabric-wise for doing this build your own medallion, and the other will have the pattern for this block that I just made. I have all the cutting, but I didn't write all the little things that make it nice for you to follow along. So again, in about an hour I should have those up. I hope you have a great January. Oh, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to go back to Facebook and just double check to see if there's any questions. Yeah. Okay, so I'm looking at the comments. Ellen, yes, I have tried doing the exact size for half square triangles, and I'm never happy. Oversized trim, they're perfect, or at least as perfect as I get. And Cheryl, yes, fork pins. They're not cheap, but good pins. You should pay for good pins. I've tried using some cheap pins, and they feel like trying to stick a nail into my project, and it's not worth it. I like really fine pins, and those fork pins holding on both sides. I can put 2 pins in close to each other, or I can put 1 fork pin in. So they just save me time, and I do enough that I don't want to spend the time if I don't have to. So there you go. I hope your January is good. Show pictures of what you do for your center block for your 18-inch. Again, it could be an 18-inch block. It doesn't have to be this one. If you look at it and go, yeah, doesn't do anything for me, I'm okay with that. This is going to be a build your own. I'm going to lead you through the process. I'm going to give you options, and you get to build your own. So have a great January, and I will see you all in February. Looks like it'll be February 2nd. My calendar's up there. Yay! So on February 2nd, I will be back with the first round. Again, this one here only has 3. Oops, I'm going the wrong way. 3 borders, and it won't. Unless you want to, you don't have to go this complicated. So I'll give you some fun options. See you later.